then we have perspectival, having to do with consciousness, and then finally we're down to the kind of knowing that we keep bumping up into, which is the knowing. I'll use a sort of a Gibsonian way of talking about it. The knowing that creates affordances that makes all the other knowings possible, right? There's a way in which biology and culture and my online cognition shape me and shape the world so that they fit each other. I mean, this is Geertz's even notion of what culture is. It simultaneously models the world to me and models me to the world. That's the participatory level. I use a metaphor from Geertz, Chris and I do in our work, right, of the agent-arena relationship, which is like your forum for action, right? That what participatory knowing does is it gets you to assume certain, like it's a process of co-identification, what the Stoics talk about. I assume an identity as I'm assigning identities to things such that affordances between me and it emerge. I'm a grasper, that's graspable, that's an affordance, and therefore I can come into relationship with the cup. That's the level of participatory knowing. And that grounds everything else, because without the affordances, you can't get any of the other kinds of knowing going.
You can't get a grip.
Yes, you can't get Merleau-Ponty's optimal grip. So here's what I would say. The participatory knowing gives you a field of affordances. The perspectival knowing makes certain affordances salient to you perspectivally. That gives you a situational awareness. The situational awareness tells you which skills from your procedural knowing you should bring to bear. And then once those skills are in action, you are getting the right kind of causal interaction with the world for your propositional evidence.
I don't think that you realize how much you pack into those statements. Maybe you do. I mean, I know you've thought about each of them for years, but you know, there's a lot. It's like the cup metaphor you used. There's a lot lurking behind the scenes there, and you hit your listener with that when you lay out that. So I'm going to ask you to do that again, if you would, and I'm going to listen to it again.
I'm happy to do so, and I know that my
presuming that if I don't understand it, there are probably a few other people who don't.
I think that's who are listening. That's a fair assumption, and I do not want my entheos to undermine my attempts at logos. So we'll put it that way. So the participatory knowing. You know, we participate in affordances. It generates a field of affordances for us.
Okay, so let me stop you there. Okay, so my value structure determines what field of affordances manifests itself to me.
So tell me more about what you mean by value structure, because if you mean
value is the determinant of my attentional resources. I'm going to attend to that which I believe is most valuable. And so I have a value hierarchy lurking in the background. That's in that deep unconscious, let's say. But that value hierarchy should be predicated on the manifestation of the highest spirit. So what I should want to afford itself to me are those affordances that afford me the opportunity to pursue the path of the highest spirit. If I'm oriented properly, if I'm worshiping properly, yes or no? Sorry, it's not a command.
Constitutively or ultimately, because there's a difference there. I mean, so like.
I probably mean both, failing to distinguish between them. But I mean, in the ideal, but that would be the ideal that I would be, what would you say, inclined to pursue if I were conscious of its existence. So I would say.
Let me see if I can map this, because this is interesting. Because I'm using the term affordance because it's become one of the central terms within.
I understand.
Yeah.
Great. Well, I didn't know that either. But that means well, why? Because that work was shelved for. I mean, I became enamored of it when I encountered it, but that work was in some sense shelved for a very long time.
Well, there's a personal reason and there's a collective reason. The personal reason is I was lucky to study and enter into collaboration with one of Gibson's great proteges, John Kennedy. And so that's how I learned to appreciate this. The field as a whole, because of the notion that, you know, cognition is not in your head, it's between you and the world, that cries out for the notion of affordance, right? It cries out for.
And so it's had its influence now.
Yes.
Or increase. I mean, it had its influence to begin with.
More than influence.
Okay.
It's now a central construct within 4E cognitive science. Central construct. Now the idea, and I think this lines up with you, but let's see, because the idea is, like, I don't have to be conscious, right, of the affordance relationship between me and the cup. That's given by me having a particular kind of body, the cup having a particular kind of location. Now, but what you're saying
You're conscious of it. You're only conscious of enough to make use of it. You're only conscious of it, what's necessary in order for you to make use of it. If that didn't work, you'd have to become conscious of more of it.
Right, but okay, I'm trying to get some. Maybe I'm worried that we're talking at cross purposes. What I mean to say is, right, there is a constitutive. I'm going to use your term. There's a constitutive value of adaptivity, and that my affordances arise for me precisely because of the kind of adaptive agent I am. So, for example, to use Gibson
want to be, or want to be.
Right, or want
I'm not sure it's what I am, or if it's I'm not sure if I'm directed by who I am, or I'm directed by my ideal. I think I'm directed by my ideal because it's in the space of desire. That's the thing.
Yeah, but
because John, are your affordances affording you, or are they affording who you could be?
But I want to say both, right? I don't.
Okay.
Yeah, right. I want to say
okay.
Right, because I want to be, because I want to be able to say that
both is sufficiently radical.
Well, I mean, I think that's. We'll have to talk about.
I mean, we are investigating the claim in some sense that the world calls you to become.
Yes. So
right. So the ideal is implicit in the affordance.
But I would also put the Heideggerian thing on it. My Dasein, my way of being in the world, also calls things forth from the world.
Yes.
This cup is not graspable to a fly. Right, that it doesn't.
Right.
That affordance doesn't. The data agent arena relationship doesn't exist for the. And no matter what the fly wishes or wants, that's not going to be the case. I want to say that there are things that are the case for me that are that play a constitutive role in the affordances that are available to me. That's what I want to emphasize.
Yes, well, that's the dogma element as well.
Perhaps.
That's the element of structure. It's the element of setting the criterion. It's the element of what already is. And it's respect for that.
But it's also the element of, that the world is also shaped independently of me, sometimes by culture, sometimes by technology, but sometimes by nature itself, such that I can make a purchase on the world. I want to resist the romantic notion that the world is a blank slate that I simply express myself upon. The world has its own structure that constrains and puts demands on me. So and sometimes we work with that. Like if this
as revealed in our errors.
Yeah, well, yeah, exactly. And if this cup didn't have what Spinoza would call its